So now would like to introduce our next speaker. Have a seat, everybody. We have one more session before break, and very pleased to welcome our next guest. So, you know, it's interesting, a bit of a story here. So I mentioned we were going to do this in February of, I'll just put this here for now. We did this last event 4 years ago, right? So 4 years ago in 2020, Sapphire was going to be in May. And after Sapphire in May was the Gartner event, EA event, and there was this event by this company called LeanIX's that was tagged on in Orlando. So I was going to go to Sapphire, as I do every year since 1993, and stay on to meet this company called LeanIX's. So could not go to Sapphire, obviously, in 2020, could not go to the LeanIX's events in 2020. So I sent a note to this guy, who you meet in a minute, back in March 13th of 2020, and I said, looking forward, because they'd pivoted to virtual. Looking forward to your virtual event in Orlando. Thanks for pulling this together. Look forward to joining. And Andre says, this was March 13th at 8:43 a.m. Great, looking forward to have you. And then I said to him, I wonder if you folks do much with SAP and SAP customers. So things have changed just a little bit. And he's doing a little bit with SAP, since SAP acquired them, and a lot with SAP customers. So a bit of added context, I'd like to roll a short video with Reuven Murato, who's the GM of Signavio and LeanIX's about SAP, to give you folks a bit of context. Why did SAP invest in LeanIX's? Roll the video, please.
Hello, everyone. I hope you're having a great time at the next generation SAP Enterprise Architects Forum. My name is Reuven Murato, and I'm responsible at SAP for our business transformation management organization from a go-to-market perspective. Business transformation at SAP includes SAP Signavio and LeanIX's. And as such, I have the great pleasure to co-lead these two great organizations with Gero Decker and the gentleman that is today with you and who I personally consider a bit like the godfather of enterprise architecture software, Andre Christ. So as you probably know, SAP entered the space of business transformation about 3.5 years ago. And we started on the process side with what we call business process intelligence, and quickly afterwards acquired Signavio. Already at that time, the reason was that SAP realized that our customers are having a hard time to deal with the quickly changing environments, inflation, COVID, supply chains breaking down, and all the other disruptions that we saw in the market. Our customers turned to us for help in becoming more agile and to address these challenges. And as such, for SAP, it was no longer enough to just point them towards S/4HANA or BTP. We actually had to help them to get there. And that is why we established this new unit, taking care of helping our customers on their transformation journey. And everything you see today with regards to the move to the cloud, the journey to the clean core, and all that serves the purpose for our customers of getting into that state of more agility and adaptability so that companies can react much faster. And looking back on the last 3 years, I think it's fair to say that we were spot on in providing that help for the transformation journeys because many, many customers are now on this journey. However, one thing became very, very apparent during this time, and that is that our customers not only lacked visibility on their process side and needed help in transforming those, but the same was true for their system and application landscape. So analyzing and understanding the current state of the system landscape, designing the future architecture and implementing it and operating it was just as important for their transformation journey as was the process side of the house. So it's actually two sides of the same coin on a transformation journey, which are tightly connected, systems and processes. And that is the reason why SAP consequentially decided to acquire LeanIX's, which was a former partner of us, which we knew well. And actually, we also used the products internally for our own transformation. And we knew what the product was doing, and we loved it. So with LeanIX's, we now offer our customers, together with Signavio, an end-to-end business transformation solution that will help our customers to transform the most holistic way and tightly connecting the key ingredients for a successful transformation: process, system and data, and the people. As you heard, with LeanIX's on board, we are now entering the next step in our evolution. And it's a very important one. And you, as the enterprise architect community, play a major role. So I'm really grateful about all the hard work that Paul is putting into this and that you all join these kind of sessions. And I'm even more happy that today you have the pleasure to now hear from Andre Chris, my new partner in crime for business transformation on the enterprise architecture side, a little bit more in depth about LeanIX, about the journey and your role on this journey as well. And with that, I'll hand it back over to you, Paul and Andre, and enjoy the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ruben. So just another point of context, and by the way, I have my LeanIX notebook, so it'll be a collector item soon, so I may auction it off later. So back in 2020, when I reached out to Andre, I viewed LeanIX as a strategic partner to the EA community back in 2020. And so SAP bought the company, so it even got even better, so we're much more strategic. So without any further ado, I want to welcome Andre Christ.
Hello, everybody. It's a great pleasure to be here, and just allow me to share a small anecdote. This morning, I got an email from someone at SAP telling me that Ruben and I have been identified as the power couple, yeah, to take a decision and action. So I didn't know that joining SAP also meant you automatically get married to Ruben. But yes, so together with Ruben, I'm leading the LeanIX side, and together with Gero, the greater part on business transformation management. Just to share a bit of background story. So I'm in this topic now for roughly 17 years. I started my career at one of the largest logistics companies in the world, DHL Group, at the time, and I got introduced to the challenges large organizations have dealing with up-to-date information about their enterprise in general, and especially about their IT. And so I got to use about the topic of enterprise architectures actually helping to do that. And so this is now like 15 years ago, and what I figured out is that it is not only a struggle logistics companies had at the time who were going through a lot of merger and acquisition, but also any kind of company who wants to plan forward their strategy, their execution of their business model, that they rely on enterprise architecture. However, what I also figured out at the time, it wasn't the best time for enterprise architecture. It was really like it had a lot of expectations in the past, but then at that time, some of those expectations were not fulfilled. However, at the time, we saw a big opportunity, so we decided to leave DHL to found the company LeanIX, because we thought it's a good time to come up with a software as a service. And when I told my friends and family, and so I'm going to found this company, Enterprise Architecture, I was saying, like, are you crazy? Yeah. So this discipline has been there for many years. The expectations have been high. They have been not fulfilled. There's many vendors around. How can you come up with this crazy idea? Go found a fintech company. Go found anything else, but not something in a space where there's a lot of vendors around, in a discipline which is not really exciting, yeah, and popular. I will say that I'm super happy and excited that we took this decision and still did it. And now, 12 years later, I can say enterprise architecture is really on the map of companies. It has really a whole different opportunity in the topic of business transformation of companies. And that's why I'm also very excited to be here, to be with all of you, be part of SAP now, to drive this topic forward. And what I will do is I would share a little bit the context how we think about business transformation at SAP now. I will go deeper into the topic of how can enterprise architecture play an important role in accelerating those transformations. Yeah, share some of the experiences we gathered over the time. And then I finish my session today with a quick outlook into how we think about the integrated tool chain, because enterprise architecture is not an alone category, it's surrounded, and of course the topic of how does business AI come to life in this category. So that's what I'm going to touch today. So I'm going to start with zooming out to the bigger picture. And we heard in the previous talk that it's a lot about mind shift, change, like unlearning things we have been doing. And if I think about unlearning, it's tightly connected to the topic of what do we want to transform to? And this is a great target state looking at the strategy of SAP, like helping companies to become agile enterprises, all around infusing agility, making sure that every organization benefits from connected networks and build sustainable operations. So great target picture. And I think many of the companies agree, yeah, this is where we want to go. This is where we want to bring our processes, our systems. But the big issue is really like, how do I gain the confidence on the journey to this? And how do I make sure it's not going to take forever, right? So this is where the problem really is about. And this is where most of the questions are around in the topic of transformation. Yeah? So how can we help companies provide better answers to come up with a decision, a faster path to the decision taking? How do we make sure that the path to a go live is safer, that there are not surprising dependencies on the journey to it? Things which haven't been looked at during the planning, but then pop up while the execution is happening. And then, of course, looking at the value creation later. Is the business case actually really becoming true? Or how are we deviating? Maybe we're deviating because of some reasons. So these are like the areas we're thinking about. So all the way from like accelerating the decision, making sure the planning is accurate, and then controlling that the actions are really happening. And we believe at SAP that there's actually 4 key dimensions which have to be considered. It's processes, it's applications, it's data, and it's people. And those dimensions are interconnected. Some companies are standing on a journey where they have very good understanding of the processes, but they need to increase their understanding more about the data. Some other companies drive it more from an IT side. So it's not that there's one starting point in this journey. Companies are different. But in the end, transformations should be looked at through the lenses of those 4 dimensions. And of course, getting there does not mean only to look at software. There's methodology, there's best practices, there's automation and integration, which is in the end powering this vision to all the way support transformations from the strategy the company has to the execution. And the 2 main things to really look at is how can we accelerate the fast time to insight? Yeah, how fast can we get an understanding about what we need to decide? And of course, the fast time to adapt. How long does it take to really change? These are the key metrics companies actually need to watch out. And of course, companies will measure, in the end, tool support and service support on this. So now, what does business transformation management now mean? What are the software categories actually to think about? So the way we think about it is along those 4 dimensions, people, process, application, and data, there's kind of a process all the way from discovering what the landscape is today, analyzing it, designing the target state, implementing, operating it. And in this space, there are multiple software categories which play an important role. And you see that here on the different layers. And we're not saying we need to invent a new software category here. But the magic is really how do we bring together the existing software categories and make them seamlessly integrated for the better purpose in the company. And what I will do now is I will focus a little bit more around the layers of processes and applications, because this is where SAP is now owning with Signavio, with LeanIX, and with Cloud ALM, strong toolings which can actually help organizations in those areas. The areas of people and data are today integrated mostly through partnerships and are areas obviously to watch closely out in terms of how do those software categories integrate well into the topic of transformation. Yeah, so this is what we're focusing on the process side: business transformation, business process management, business analysis, process analysis and mining, hyper automation. Of course, in the area of applications, enterprise architecture, application lifecycle management, and application portfolio management. So this is to set a bit the context, how we think about it, like the dimensions and the software categories which play a role in the area of business transformation. I want to zoom into the topic of enterprise architecture. So I think this is where we are all about here. This is where I'm very passionate about, and where I'd like to raise the key questions now for how architects can actually accelerate the transformations. And I start with the first question: how to actually calculate the case for the CEO and the CFO. So really okay, now what is actually convincing the board, the management, to invest further into architecture? And the way we think about it is really and what I've seen in many, many conversations it has to boil down to very, very simple understanding. In the end, it's about making it faster, better, and cheaper, and making it tangible how architecture can actually help there. So let's break it down. What does faster mean? So faster means helping the organization to complete transformation projects really on time by early identifying dependencies. Yeah? So it's not like wasting the time because while the execution was happening, an interface was all of a sudden found, which was overlooked, or systems were running on a technology where there were no skills available while the execution took place. So it's all around, do I have, in a data-driven way, the information together to run my transformation program? It's about reducing risks, like reducing technical debts in organizations by planning the modernization ahead. And, of course, it's avoiding additional support costs by early on understanding what's going to come in a couple of years in my landscape, so where do I need to prepare now and invest? What I see currently in the macro environment is that there needs to be money to fund transformation. The budgets are getting tighter in all the places. So the way I'd like to look at it is really like, how can we fund the transformation by reducing the legacy and the issues in the landscape? So because in the end, let's face it, the budgets, like without inflation, are flat or even decreasing. So there has to be activity in order to streamline the portfolio to reinvest the money. A CIO recently said to me, in the past, it was all around, there was a CIO who was like a cost cutter, and then the CIO came in who was like the inventor. What today is required is to actually do that at the same time and understand in which areas of the portfolio do I need to apply which tactics to redirect the money into another area. So I believe it's an important task to be able to run rationalization activities in the one place and drive innovation to cross-fund it in the other areas in the same organization. What is actually standing in the way? Well, in the way, it is like not knowing how I actually achieve this. If the overview on the landscape isn't clear, it's hard. And this is what we typically see as the main problem statement. It's like organizations who have global landscapes, local landscapes in their countries. They're all interconnected. It's a mix, of course, of like SAP landscapes. It's non-SAP systems. So if you want to drive forward change in such a landscape without knowing what's actually out there, it's close to impossible. And what we're seeing still is that the true knowledge about those landscapes is often only residing in Excels, PowerPoint, Visios, and that makes it hard to turn it into actionable programs. Yeah? And that's why, as long as that information is not accessible in a more actionable way, it's really a long time to insight to take the right decisions. Number two, how do I actually engage my organization? So let's assume for a second, okay, business case, we're all in, but that doesn't mean we're getting the organization engaged. And I think there's two things about it which we've seen. The first one is really about like architecture storytelling. And so when I started LeanIX, it was all around, like, what are you doing? Enterprise architecture, please help me explain what this is. Yeah? And it's really like, and this is like on the left-hand side, this is a picture from a board presentation we once had. It's like at a large automotive supplier, they said, like, look, it's so hard to clean up at home, yeah, if you want to bring new clothes in. So it's really like, enterprise architecture is like the Marie Kondo method of cleaning up, yeah, at home. And then you can allow to kind of sort things out, buy new clothes, put them in, sort them out. But if you start in a mess, it's very difficult to understand how you do it. Yeah? So it's really about like really explaining an organization what this is about. And this is probably only the tip of the iceberg, but underneath, it's really like, how do you bring it into architecture storytelling and make it visible in your organization? That's one. And the other is also a real-life example. So this is one of the most fun ones I've seen. It's all around, like, how do I put in some fun and gamification into the topic of reducing application landscapes? Yeah, so they use the analogy to kill an app. Yeah, so put this out as a challenge to the entire organization, so people actually could vote for which application they could should actually be killed. Yeah. So by the end of that challenge, they actually identified more than 150 application organization to be killed, and then to deeper analyze if they can get rid of it. Yeah. So really addressing the problem. It's easy to introduce stuff in the organization, but it's hard, especially software, to take it out later. So coming up with such methods to really engage the people and make it a bit playful. So these are, I think, two important cornerstones. Like how do I really activate the organization and make use of that? Now, what are the skills I need in these days to really help the organization transform? And I really like this analogy of the architect elevator, which has been invented by Gregor Hope. And he's like explaining it in this way, and I really like this, which is like, you have to translate across many levels in a big story or in a high story building. Yeah. So if you actually only look at one part of the house, yeah, it's very difficult to bring the people together. Yeah, seeing this example, like some people in the strategy are thinking, oh, we're going all in direct to consumer, but on the technology side, the area, like the discussion is going into a whole different direction. The role of the architect is really to ride this elevator and to bring the message together. And what's also notable, sometimes the house is so tall that there need to be multiple architects riding the elevator. Some ride in the upper stories, some ride in the middle stories, and some in the lower stories, but they all have to connect. And it's an incredibly hard task, and that's why it's crucial, especially these days in all those transformations, that people get a good understanding what it means to ride this elevator, to make sure that the levels really on the architecture side connect. Yeah, so and therefore this theme of the architect elevator is crucial also to think about, well, now how does tooling actually help me here? How do I really travel across those layers? And this is where, if we think about like what is the architecture stack really looking like today, we at LeanIX have always thought in ecosystems and partnerships. We don't believe that LeanIX and now also at SAP, we should be doing everything in one solution. We should be smart about what problems we solve really well and where we integrate with other leaders in specific categories. And so if we look at the architecture stack across like really the elevator, then for us, it starts with the understanding of the business processes. Of course, the business capabilities, the application architecture, infrastructure, technology, and all the way down to the productized infrastructure is crucial. But here we see with adjacent categories, which, for example, are really well supported today by SAP Signavio on the process side, or with ServiceNow on the infrastructure side, these are important players in the market. And LeanIX is literally helping architects to travel the architect elevator. And there's two main processes we think about. The one is, how do we help companies go from business strategy to IT execution? And how do we help them from going from the as-is to the to-be planning? And I want to share a bit of insight into what's our line of thinking here. So let's start with how do you go from business strategy to IT execution? Yeah? So that's, I think, what many organizations have always thought about, like, okay, how do I do business and IT alignment? The way we think about it is really like it all starts with an understanding of the business capability of the organization. Yeah? So the alignment of the architecture is not technology driven, also like we heard in the previous talk. And we see business capabilities is a topic which is getting more and more understood today in organization. Unfortunately, the next step is often not made, which is really powerful, understanding which of those business capabilities are actually having what impact for the organization. And here, the method of pace layering can become very powerful. And it's very simple. It's distinguishing between, like, what are capabilities in my business where I want to be the innovation leader? Where do I want to differentiate? And where is it just commodity? And just by understanding that across the business capabilities of the company, it's really much easier to have a conversation between the business and the IT if the strategies are aligned. We believe it doesn't make sense to do custom software development, for example, in areas where there's commodity software, or even the other way around, where there's innovation in the landscape. Yeah? So there it makes sense to be specific and unique in the market. Where there's differentiating capabilities, well, the processes need to be extremely well running. And often the step is left out. So I think it's an important step in driving forward the conversation between the business and the IT side. And then based on that, a portfolio assessment can be done and application roadmaps can be developed. So this is really like looking all the way from like, how do I connect this conversation? Some of our customers do conduct this conversation not as an entirety for their organization, but they do it business unit by business unit, because the assessment for the PACE layer can be different for the business units. Think about an automotive company where they have a premium brand and where they have like a commodity brand. There they might have completely different assessments of their capabilities. Payment in the one area might be an important area to differentiate across other premium vendors, whereas in the commodity space, payment needs to be absolutely commodity. So it helps also to differentiate what the different business units in an organization are actually having as a strategy. The other end-to-end view I'd like to share with you is really the topic of how do you get from an as-is assessment to the to-be planning? And what do we see as two major areas companies are focusing on? Right now, there's two things. The one is really understanding what is the opportunity to bring the existing portfolio into the cloud, and the other is where do I stand with my technology debt and technology risk? Yeah, and we see companies adopting more rigorously now the 6R method AWS has invented, really systematically understanding which parts of my landscape can I rehost, what can I re-platform, what should I re-architect, and so on. And leveraging the overview the architects can provide on like where do I want to apply which strategy. The other part is driving forward the understanding of tech obsolescence mitigation. So really understanding which technology is going out of life at what point in time, and when do I need to set up which modernization programs to upgrade those technologies. It's an important input factor for the annual planning, as an example. Yeah, many companies today do annual planning, and a CIO once told me, well, I'm getting proposals for projects for the next year without even understanding what are we actually replacing in my landscape. Are we introducing new technology? Are we replacing it? And sometimes this triggers, during the annual planning process, send people back to actually do the homework. And this is a laborious process. So this can be much better streamlined, basing the annual planning on facts and coming up with a robust plan on the modernization. And this, of course, all fits then in the end into a modernization plan. So how does the strategic roadmap look like? What's going to change in the portfolio over time? Now, the next question is obviously, how do I link now the business and the IT view? And this is where the partnership of Signavio and LeanIX comes to fruition. And we started at LeanIX working with Signavio when Signavio had like around 30 employees. LeanIX was about 4 employees 10 years ago. So way before both companies actually were acquired by SAP, we thought it's a great idea to connect those worlds and make sure they seamlessly work together. And so where on the process side, you really look on like, what's my process language? How do my processes run? Very comparable like you would look on the application landscape, for example, grouped by the business capabilities. And the very simple, but I would say yet unique part about it is that those two worlds are seamlessly connected. So you can like always transition back and forth between the process model on the one hand side, understanding which systems are supporting in what step my business processes, and on the other hand side, create questions toward the architecture, something like, if I'm going to replace this technology, which processes are going to be affected by that? Yeah? So if I'm going to have an interface which is changing, well, who do I actually need to form? Who are the process owners who might potentially be affected by it? And so this round trip really using a consistent set of applications during the process modeling, and on the other hand side, using the processes to get the business context into the architecture is really powerful, and it's set up in a very easy way. There's no implementation effort to connect those two systems. It's an API configuration, and it's done. So that is how the link is today. Now, going forward, now being part of SAP, obviously I asked the question, like, for the different CIOs out there, what is actually the importance of ERP transformation on the agenda of the CIOs in this year? And this is a survey I did only like a few weeks ago, sending out to a broad range of CIOs from various industries, where I asked, like, what do you expect from enterprise architecture and enterprise architects in 2024? And what we've seen is like two observations. The first is ERP transformation is a crucial topic where enterprise architects are actually supposed to jump in and help the organization drive this forward. But on the other hand side, it's a broad range of use cases at the same time. So those organizations are typically not saying, well, I only focus on this one, but I have topics like cost rationalization, security threats, data quality, modernization, shift to the cloud. And the benefit enterprise architects can bring is that the data for those different use cases can be reused. Yeah? So there's a benefit if companies start with ERP transformation as one of the triggers for setting up an architecture program, that this information can be reused for various other use cases. Now, the question is, well, how does this really work? And what is SAP also doing about this now? So if we think about this, the disciplines of business process transformation, today supported really well by Signavio, and application lifecycle management supported by the SAP Cloud ALM team. So how do we bring this now well together with enterprise architecture so that this is really coming up as an integrated tool chain? And we have a talk later on from Michael on the Cloud ALM side, who's going to go deeper on this chart, like what are the exact steps, how those different categories of software like work along this journey from discovering all the way to operating a landscape, and how do they link together? Yeah, so we really think about like the seamless integration. So, and what I can share with you today, and what is actually quite exciting, is how do we now drive forward this better integration of the tool chain? And so what we do today along this process, all the way from discovering to operating, we think in two areas. The one is, how do we really integrate well with the SAP ecosystem of tooling? Yeah, and there we see all the way from discovering to operating, what are relevant offerings and tools SAP has today. And there's three areas we're investing now into a very seamless integration. The first one is, how do we make sure that auto-discovery of SAP landscapes for enterprise architects is absolutely seamless? So just imagine, with a push on a button, the on-prem and cloud landscapes of SAP customers are moved into an enterprise architecture repository, are modeled out so that you can understand what SAP systems are actually out there. It's a huge opportunity. We get this feedback often that companies approach and say, like, how do I model actually my SAP landscape? And I believe it's not about modeling it manually in an architecture solution. It's like automatically showing it what the as-is state is. Because then architects can focus on the non-SAP side and add this to the overview. So that's one where we're investing into. The second where we're investing into bringing reference content into LeanIX. And so this reference content is all around which business capabilities are out there, which solution capabilities does SAP offer, and what are actually the products underneath. We get the feedback, the product portfolio from SAP is so rich, there's so many great capabilities, but it's hard for us from an architecture perspective to understand which capabilities are supporting what. And when we're looking at a solution, when we're doing an evaluation of software, have we actually overlooked something we could take from the SAP portfolio? And then this area number C here is really like, once the design of the target landscape has finished, how do we make sure that the projects, the epics, the initiatives to bring it to life, that this is floating into the execution? And here we're excited to partner up with the Cloud ALM team in order to make sure that the roadmap, which is created from an architecture perspective, is completely linked into the execution projects, and that also the feedback in the end is floating back then into into LeanIX. Think about initiatives of clean core, companies driving forward and understanding, are they meeting those milestones? This information can also float back, and Michael is also going to touch on this later. So I think there's a lot of opportunities now, and a big focus where we're working on to make sure that LeanIX integrates really well into the SAP toolchain. What is important for me to say that we can only be successful as an architecture solution if we equally integrate well into the third-party tool stack. And I think this is an important message also into the market and to all of our customers. LeanIX is not about now becoming an SAP internal EA tool. LeanIX needs to make sure that it really bridges and balances out both the being a great solution integrated into the customer's tool stack. And today we integrate well, for example, with ServiceNow, with Jira as examples, with Apptio or Lucidchart. And we're extending and investing further into those integrations, of course. And that's important because all the customers today who run large SAP landscapes, they do not only have SAP tooling to manage their landscapes. They also have it, of course, but they have to look at their architectures in a holistic way. So the combination of that is crucial. So investing both in a seamless integration on the SAP side, but of course keep being open on the third-party tooling side. And as we also have the colleagues from BTP here today, we also see a huge opportunity for enterprise architecture to become much more closely integrated in supporting the activities around BTP. Yeah? So as an example, what I brought here is actually a live example where BTP reference architectures can actually be brought into LeanIX automatically and then be further developed and used as blueprints for solutions the architects are driving forward. Yeah, so this is great because the BTP team is like building out all their reference architectures now in a format which also works with LeanIX, and we're making it even simpler for those reference architectures to show up. There's a number of more great ideas we have on how the look on the enterprise architecture and the BTP can actually much better work together. For example, making sure that data is exposed through the integration suite, identification of interfaces, and so on. So in summary, I must say I'm absolutely thrilled that LeanIX is becoming part of the SAP ecosystem. We have huge opportunities to make the discipline of enterprise architecture even more data-driven and more integrated with that, while at the same time keeping it absolutely leading for customers in the market and deal with their landscapes, which are even non-SAP. Now I want to finish this overview on what's our line of thinking about the topic of business AI and enterprise architecture. I really think the way SAP is speaking about the topic of AI is spot on, because the way we think about it is really how do we take the AI technology and make it and apply it to tangible use cases. Yeah? So it's not about delivering raw AI and the customer has to think about how do I drive value out of it, but the big trick is with business AI come up with great use cases in the different categories and then make sure the customers benefit from it. And we think about the topic of business AI and LeanIX in two big buckets. The one is, how do we actually reflect it in our meta model in LeanIX? So how do we make sure companies use it to drive forward the adoption and the governance of AI in their landscapes? But of course, on the other hand side, how do we actually think about AI in our own product? Yeah? Features which support the work of the architects. Yeah? So it's all about helping the company to adopt AI in the landscape. And the other is making LeanIX smarter. So I want to dive into the first topic on driving forward AI adoption and governance. And what I believe is architects are really best positioned to drive forward AI in organizations across the landscape and help to set up the right governance. And the reason is, if we look on the LeanIX meta model, which is going across all the layers from strategy and transformation, business architecture, application data architecture, down to the technical architecture, architects are set up to ask the right questions with the data they have. How does generative AI actually contribute to my business objectives? Yeah, so where do we use it to fulfill a business objective? Which business capabilities actually benefit most from further AI solutions? Where can I bring in efficiency? Where can I bring in automation? Which processes benefit from it? Where do I have AI algorithms in my applications, which I'm using already today or which I'm planning to use? It's a question we hear customers even get from their boardrooms right now, said that the board is saying like, guys, yeah, how do we achieve the 20 to 30% efficiency increases now in our company? Help me understand across our business capabilities, what AI are we leveraging? Where are we using AI use cases? Yeah? And I think this is where LeanIX can come in and avoid that companies think about like, how am I going to do this now? So the way we think about it is really like, how can we out of the box support with a taxonomy so that companies in thinking about their landscapes can, for example, map out what are the large language models they're using in which software. And instead of leaving the organizations alone with how this is modeled out, we're currently developing an extension of our architecture meta model to come up with like an out-of-the-box taxonomy, which is always up to date, not needing companies to maintain like which large language models are out there and so on. Yeah, so for example, what you see here, understanding in which of my applications am I actually using which large language model and giving support to understand what is used where. So there's further questions like, how is the data actually flowing between the interfaces? Which interfaces and APIs provide the right data to go into the large language models? All the way to, well, how is my AI toolchain actually looking like? So how do I reflect the different systems needed for reinforced learning and so on? So again, looking at those questions, we believe the data about architecture is crucial to drive forward both the adoption and governance, and architects will play in the next couple of years an incredibly important role to drive forward the AI adoption in a systematic way. That's another part to it, and this was what I was talking about before. How do we now make use of AI in an architecture tool itself? And you probably all know, if you have had the task to document your architectures, well, it can be tedious. Yeah? There's manual parts in it. Architecture management is not a fully automated discipline. And our ambition is, of course, to lower the hurdle and make it easier and easier for many, many users to do it. And this is where, obviously, AI can come in. And we have now even more than 400 customers actively using our beta version, LeanIX, on generative AI. And one of the latest use cases really like that in every description field in LeanIX, you can actually now leverage generative AI. It's like easy as that, like proposing a description for, in this case, a component. Like very easy, using summarizing function, reformatting the text, and all of that. So instead of taking the text, taking it out into OpenAI, which, for example, could impose a security risk because confidential data is then moved out of the company, it's all happening where you edit the text. So this is all about like, how can we help companies to be more efficient dealing with documentation right where they are and speed it up for the everyday user so that they waste less time in the tedious documentation tasks. So making that easier. So that's the one area. The other area is really like how, if we now think forward a bit, like how do we simplify it even more for the everyday user? So, and we believe there's a huge opportunity with enterprise architecture and generative AI, especially for the usability. So let's just think about the use case. Well, I'm interested in understanding what are actually relevant diagrams I'm having about like HR applications. So instead of navigating somewhere, I can just type it in and ask and get the following data diagrams from my landscape. Yeah, so I can use them to navigate. So it's a whole different way to experience an architecture repository, which makes it even more accessible by people out there who can actually interact with it without getting a deep training on architecture. I believe if we really think that forward, the data and the information and the views on architecture can be even more democratized by the use of AI in the future. With that, I'm closing my session today. So with LeanIX, And what I've shown here, especially also with the opportunities of generative AI, I believe there's a huge opportunity to make transformations faster, to accelerate them without losing control of them. And so with that, I'm excited to see there's so much interest in the topic of enterprise architecture here. And yeah, I'm looking forward to, with all of you, to drive this topic forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So, a couple more things before we close. And thanks again, Andre. So again, well, no brownies at break, just so you know, on that whole front. And the other pieces in that, Andre will, do you have a few minutes afterwards? You grabbing a coffee?
Yes, yeah.
Andre will be by the LinkedIn booth afterwards for if you want to say hello to Andre.
LeanIX. Different company.
Sorry. Anyways, it's live, obviously. So just a few other things that what else was I going to say?
I'm sorry.
That's okay. You threw me off there a little bit. So just after break, we're going to take a half-hour break until about 11 o'clock. As a reminder, we're also streaming TVs outside the room by the vendor booths and the conversation stations. And we're fully streaming in Demo A on the top floor and Solutions on the second floor. So, and just before we go, you know what's next before we break? Andre, the last time we did this was at the LeanIX event in Frankfurt. But I also want to highlight as well, I mentioned as well, we're going to see more things virtual and face-to-face. So LeanIX has 4 one-day events that'll happen in April. They're in Palo Alto, they're Chicago, and Dallas, and I think New York might be one locations. But go see by the booth, 4 one-day events to get together with the architecture community as well. So we know how to do this now, right?
Do we go over there? Okay.
We'll switch it up.
Yeah.
And smile, everybody. Awesome.
Nice.
Thank you. Enjoy the break, and thank you.
Of our life, our wife and kids. So